Hey everybody, this is Andres Useche, and we're recording a conversation. We're continuing conversation for GQ TV with Michele Yu, Cindy Chao, some great production designers that I was very happy to meet. So thank you for talking to us again. As you know, I'm very interested in promoting diversity, celebrating the work of great artists such as yourselves who've made your way into the industry. This time I would like to start by asking you, because as filmmakers, we get into the subject and we love to talk about it, but in a way that's perhaps not as accessible to people seeing this for the first time who may want to make a career into filmmaking, but maybe they don't know the difference between, say, production design and art direction or set designers, and how that hierarchy works and how you work with each other in a department. And maybe look for a way to explain it so that people know how to make their way up into the industry if they're so inclined.
Sure. I mean, that was, I really like explaining this, and thank you for this question, actually. Because, previously we spoke with you about how Cindy and I came up, which is we worked on independent films, independent shorts, music videos, all of those things, non-union, just figuring it out as we went along. And that was because we didn't come equipped into this world with inroads into Hollywood. We didn't already know how to start a career in production design. So luckily, the two of us linked up pretty soon into our interest in pursuing PD as a career. And together, we really have figured it out as a team. So what we can tell you is, depending on what the job is, depending on if it's non-union or union, those roles can change quite a bit. In the non-union world, it is very much a budget limited, resource limited world where if you are in the art department, you will be asked to do so many things that are not necessarily in the union world properly within that department. So when we were coming up, we did props, we did set dressing, we did shopping and research and, build some light building on our own. So we did a little bit of everything. When you jump into union work, it is very, very different. So as production designers, we are the head of the art department, and the art department in the union world, again, is a little bit different than quite different actually than the non-union world, in that when you talk about the art department, you're really talking about art directors, assistant art directors, art coordinators, set designers, graphic artists, illustrators, concept artists, basically the world that the Art Directors Guild encompasses, IETSE Local 800. You're also, as production designer, however, you do oversee the work of the set decorating team. And that's the set decorators, set dressers, their buyers, their on-set dressers. And it's not a direct path where, the on-set dresser is not checking in with the production designer. They're going up their chain. But we are collaborating with the set decorator every day, and we are talking with them about what the look of the show is. Same with the prop master, a similar parallels between those departments and their relationship to production design. Construction is much more the purview of the production designer and art director when you're working on a union show. So then you get the addition of a construction coordinator who then also does hiring and oversees the construction budget and hires within their department, prop maker carpenters, greensmen, greenspersons, I should say, laborers, painters, all of that world. And so when we're on a show now, we are, as production designers, still one of the first teams brought on the show. So it's us, the directors, oftentimes the DP is shortly after that, locations, and we immediately start having conversations with those folks as well as the producers, pinning down whether something in the script should be a location or a build. And then as the show progresses, and as our team gets hired on, our set decorator, our prop master, graphics, everybody gets hired on, the ideal situation is in TV that we are staying at least one step ahead of everybody else. So we are determining the design, the look, the palette, all of the things, and then delegating the creation of those things, the physical creation of those things, and the physical accomplishment of those things to other people within our crew, and then people below them on their crews. So it is a filmmaking, TV making, it's a huge collaboration, and it only gets bigger and bigger and bigger as you work on bigger shows.
Yeah, I would only add that from a director's perspective, like the heads of those departments, on one hand, we have the director of photography, and on the other hand, production design, and you guys are hugely responsible for how the entire project looks. Just photography on one hand, and production design. So Cindy, I remember you told me that you, like myself, you started directing originally, right? But you found out that it wasn't your thing, initially. But I was wondering how that vision of directing, if at all, affects how the two of you as collaborators work with each different director to help their vision become a reality, and how do you juggle that with the overriding, for example, in a TV show, overriding vision of the showrunner?
Of course. I mean, having that experience of directing, small shorts in the past really gave me the love of continuing storytelling, like I said previously, storytelling visually. And when we communicate and collaborate with directors, we actually come up and have a conversation of a backstory for each of the characters, because that helps translate what goes into their sets, what goes into the interiors of a home, what goes into their rooms. And even though on film, when you see it in the big picture, they don't really show those little details. But when we have conversations with our crew members, specifically with our set decorator Lizzie Boyle, we help come up with that backstory of like, what would this character have in their space? What did they do that morning? And just having constant conversations with the director solely on that really, really helps us do our job.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Especially thinking about that work with the directors, I thought it was very important also what Michele said about how it takes a huge collaboration to make a movie happen, and the way you've illustrated that you create backstories yourselves. Some people are not aware of just how much each member of the group has to be in tune with the overriding vision, looking in the same direction and understanding that, to be able to fill in the gaps where maybe people are not looking too directly, and how interpret that aesthetically. We have actors who create their own backstories. You guys think in terms, working with wardrobe department and shaping, for example, the look of somebody's room can tell you so much about a character, the way they leave their house, the way they move around it. So in that case, for example, how do you, it's just important for me as a fan, as a filmmaker, to understand, how do you navigate, for example, the personality of each character with the aesthetic identity of the movie or the show as a whole, because you want to communicate the individualities of each character, but you also have this overriding aesthetic for the whole show. So maybe Michele, if you want to take this.
Sure, and that's a really interesting question. Generally speaking, the characters drive what the look of the whole show is in our minds, and we have found that is often how the show running process, the writing process, all of that kind of dovetails into this, where the writers aren't going to be writing a character that doesn't fit their show. You know what I mean? And there is already a feeling that is created from the interaction of all those characters together that determines in itself what the look of the show should be. Mm-hmm. So coming from a place where we're starting with characters as our starting point, like Cindy and I do, we're never trying to impose what we think would look cool on top of a story. We're starting with the story first and then trying to figure out what would serve that. So it's an interesting question, because I could see how you could be in a situation where those two things are at odds and you have to reconcile them. But the way that we work, I don't know that we've ever encountered that because, even if it's a, super broad example, if you have a story and there is an antagonistic character that is coming in and disturbing the peace of the core group or something like that, even that character is part of that world. So what you're really doing is world building based on who the people are. So there are aspects of every personality in a script, as character-wise, that are going to come in and fill in that world, unless the point is to have a character that does feel very jarring, that doesn't feel like part of the world you're building on purpose. There's really never a time where that becomes an issue, because you've taken that into account when you've built the world around them already. Because you're building, when you're doing production design, you're building a world from nothing. Even if you're shooting locations, even if you're basing it on real life and having it be very true to real life, we still treat it as a blank canvas and an empty palette. It's not even walking into a location, the first thing we think about is, do we need to change the colors? Do we need to change what the bones of the space already are? Or are we choosing it because it already is the right thing for us? And so it is, production design is world building. It's world building from the ground up every time you walk into a location, every time you think about what a set should be.
That's great.
Yeah, and just to add to that, like Michele said, it really does come from the script. And once we get all the details in the script, we try to think of questions to ask for, this goes back to the director question, but we try to think of questions to ask the director more about the character, right? Like, you know nothing about me other than my biography. So what is the biography of this character that's beyond what's written in the script? And like, the interactions that the character has with other characters also kind of inform what other questions to ask, like a relationship. What's the relationship of this character with their mother? There's like a tension between them, and where is that tension coming from? Like, where is the mother coming from? And those are just some of the basic starting points that we'll pull from in order for us to develop these conversations with the director. And sometimes the director doesn't know the answers to the question, and so it becomes a conversation between the whole team. And from there, it just is like an ongoing process of character building and how that translates into the sets.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, I was wondering if at any point does that become as specific as saying, we've identified certain palette of colors for the show, that are its identity, and maybe this character represents this complementary color, because of its relationship with the lead, which is this color. Do you talk about it at all like that?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Cindy, like one of the most recent examples of a show we've been talking about with you already is American Born Chinese, and the characters of the two parents, Simon and Christine. Yeah. Our overall palette for that, we leaned very heavily into sort of teal, turquoise, greens and blues, and orange, and all shades of that peach. Very nuanced shades of both of those palettes, and those are two colors that work together very well. Yeah. It was a little bit instinctual. Like we both found ourselves drawn to that palette for that show specifically, but it was also it also ended up being something that was in a later script where those two characters come from two families historically in that story. That were at odds with each other, that were in conflict with each other. And the writers had actually assigned green to Christine's family and orange to Simon's family. And those come together in a prop in the show, in a pendant that is a wedding gift from Simon to Christine. But when we were designing their spaces, and the Wang family home is the most important of the spaces, the most impactful of the spaces in their lives, we were designing it with that color differentiation in mind. So we were very much choosing to lean heavily on green in spaces that Christine inhabited and that Christine was sort of in command of. So she was very much, her character was very much scripted to be sited in the kitchen, in the dining room, sort of the spaces in and around there. The father had a favorite reclining chair in the living room that he always retired to in the evenings and would take naps in. And we had designed this house to be very open plan, accurate to the period, but still open plan, so that camera could always sort of index characters against each other, even at a distance.
Mhm.
So what we got through, brilliant DP, Brett Pollack, that we worked with a couple of times now, he was able to get these shots where the color temperatures were very different. The colors on the walls were very different. You got really interesting play between those two. And it was always character driven. It was always because Christine was there and then Simon was here. And you wanted to see those two colors play with each other.
Amazing. I was thinking of many questions arose while you were saying that specifically, and maybe, Cindy wants to talk about these, the way in which you guys have worked so effectively with the director of photography, and working with the layout and the movement required for the show, and maybe what challenges that created throughout your career, specifically in these last two shows, and a Black Lady sketch show where you have such huge demands on you.
Yeah, I mean, just to discuss further on our experience with Brett on American Born Chinese, our collaboration with him was not challenging at all. He was such a great collaborator. Our first conversation with him about framing and our ideas of what the show should look like was just endless ideas. And there was always conversation of framing shots overhead as if heaven was looking down on Jin and his world. There was always talks about that. But when we had conversations with him, we talked about the architecture of the house and how Jin was always going to be seeing his parents kind of through a little bit separated. And so we would always talk about like the framing within frame and how partitions that were architecturally built into the house would help frame him separately from the parents. And things like, we had ideas of building a skylight, in the hallway as if that was like the portal of heaven into the home. And things like that just really helped support our work through his eyes. Michele talked about him also creating a light for heaven, a lot of the exterior heaven scenes based on some of the references that we showed him. And he really helped develop our ideas of what kind of shots should be, also as a storytelling point.
Yeah, and it worked beautifully. And maybe for our audience, I just wanted to add that we're peering behind, the curtain to see all the small little decisions that are made in order for that feeling that maybe unconsciously the audience may not be thinking of everything that's going on. They shouldn't be. They just have a feeling, and the reason a moment lands and the reason it works and it touches you emotionally is because of the hard work that everybody's putting into every single one of these details so that every moment works well. As a screenwriter, I'm very curious to know how you read a screenplay and how much degree of specificity do you like or do you prefer, so that you have either more room to create or as a starting point you like more detail or less?
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar but different. If we're talking about a Black Lady sketch show, we are started with a over 250 page Bible of different sketches, and each of the sketches are unique in its own way. The writers have done a really good job for that show. Before each sketch, they've given quite a description what each sketch is about, what each character is like. And that's a great starting point for us. And from there, we build the world by, having conversations of what the overall look should be based on the tone of the sketch. And from there, it's constant conversations. Then we start location scouting, but it's completely different, and it's always fun because we try to make each set different from all the other ones in each season.
I will add, for Black Lady Sketch Show, they invite us to all of the table reads, which is amazing.
Yes.
Because, well, so when I first dive into a script, when it's our agent sends us something and we were supposed to read it and see whether it's something we're interested in, and then once we're hired, the process of rereading that script and getting into it and doing breakdowns. Before all of that, I do a passive reading it where my production designer brain isn't turned on. I'm just reading it as somebody who is reading it, as an audience member, and trying to take in what the beats are and what it feels like and what the characters feel like. Because I think that's an essential part of the process, to read it as though you're somebody who is consuming it as a fan or as an audience member, and not somebody who's got a hand in creating it. Because if you look at it through the lens of somebody who's creating it too soon, you run the risk of imposing something on it that it doesn't actually want to be, and you run the risk of entering into a partnership with the director or the showrunner or all your collaborators where you're forcing something into it that they don't all see, so you really want to start with the script and what it actually is first. But with Black Lady Sketch Show, they go the extra mile on that show because we get invited to the table reads, which is not always true for production designers, unfortunately. But when we are fortunate enough to work on a show that prioritizes that, we get invited to the table reads. So Black Lady Sketch Show, all 4 seasons, we got invites either in the room or on Zoom once the pandemic hit. But we found that to be so essential because, like Cindy said, it's so much content, it's so much to take in. You're reading, and the way they approach that show, it is very much little worlds that you're building. It's dozens of them each season. So to be able to, we do get the scripts beforehand. I tended to not really read the scripts until the table read and just watch the table read happen, because it's quicker to get it into your head that way when someone's performing it, and you understand it a totally different way when somebody's saying the words. So for that, where it's so comedy based and it's so based on who is in what role, and it's so based on the delivery of stuff and how they play together, for that show, the table reads were the biggest advantage, because then we could see exactly in the room what they intended with what they wrote. And then build it out from there.
Right.
It's funny because my process is a little bit different, because I actually do like to read the sketches before the table read, because I like to visualize, like, this is how I interpret this sketch and how I visualize the world. And then when I attend the table read, I love for when I'm wrong, because then it can change, and I just love oh my gosh, I totally missed the comedy in this one, and it just really helps me brainstorm more, because I when I'm wrong, I just know okay, well, I'm not going to do that, so so then it helps me translate it differently. It steers me in a different pathway, because I feel like I've already thought of one way to translate it, and then it kind of opens my eyes, and that's my process. Yeah,
it's very interesting to me. I may keep coming back to this, but it's amazing that you have this great partnership, the powerhouse duo that the two of you are. And when I think of great collaborations, even like the Coen brothers in the directing field, or the Wachowskis, and it seems like we're all team players in a big movie, but when it comes to having the same role, I wonder how the two of you found your groove in working with each other. What little obstacles did you have to overcome, and how did you get to this place where you're so successful and want to keep doing it?
I don't know that we could have just jumped into a partnership like this if we didn't have the history we did working in India. I think that was a very unique situation, that was a testing ground for whether we would work as a team. And it was also a thing where the reason we gravitated towards each other is because when you're in that world and you're being asked to be the only person in an entire department, by folks who probably don't understand what your entire department entails, because they haven't done it themselves and been asked to do the things that they're asking you to do, you are grasping for anyone who can help you, who is reliable. So one of the big reasons we started working together is because we both recognized, like, both of us are hard workers, both of us are in it for the long haul on a project, neither of us are quitters. It's those work ethic things that I think bonded us in the beginning of, like, this is a reliable person, like, we're going to call each other and we're going to keep working together. Because if I book a job, or if Cindy books a job and she needs help or I need help, I know that person's going to show up for me. And then we started booking things together when that made sense, when that became clear that made sense, and that's how we were kind of forged as a team. That's why we still work that way. So
I agree. I can't imagine doing this career without Michele. Like, we've done it together for so long, and that's the only way I know how to work. Like, it's just so nice to have a sounding board who, understands, what it's like to be Asian American female working in this very male dominant industry. And I can tell you, like outside of, the job itself, like how often I would confide in Michele and just like feel more confident in doing this very demanding job.
I appreciate that, and the fact that women of color and me myself, counting myself as a person of color, but acknowledging the privilege that I have as a male, I feel like it's a responsibility for me to try to seek out and empower those voices, and I'm very grateful that the two of you continue that tradition of speaking, and in the case of Black Lady Sketch Show, supporting that culture. I understand that you also use Black created products in your work, and that you try to work very closely to empower those voices and serve that vision, right, with your showrunner.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for giving the opportunity through this interview, even for us to speak and have our voices heard. We really appreciate it. And the where you're coming from as well. For Black Lady Sketch Show, it was really like, what's the assignment? We understand the assignment. The assignment is
right.
that we're speaking to audiences that have never been prioritized by mainstream media. We are giving folks a platform that have never had this prominent a platform before. Talking about things that are funny that other people don't know about if you're not within that culture. It's was very educational and really uplifting, and really, like, that whole show, it was such a positive experience for us across the board. It was unlike any other show we've ever worked on, and it's because of where it came from, the assignment that it gave us, and rising to the challenge of finding even new opportunities. Because Robin Thede, our showrunner for that show, she didn't ask us to please make sure that you're using products from Black-owned businesses. Make sure that the props department, with our prop master Todd Daniels, make sure that you're reaching out to these brands specifically. He did that research. Our set decorator Lizzie, who showcased so many Black female visual artists in home interiors and interiors on sets in that show. Cindy and I had conversations with her where we're like, this is what we'd like to do, and she did all of that research on her own, and she reached out to so many people. That was just being excited about what Robin wanted to do with the show
Mm-hmm.
and responding to that and figuring out, oh, what else can we add to it? You have a vision. What else can we do to support that?
Did it surprise you at all, just the scope of this project? Because this show fascinates me, and it's just an amazing show. It's hilarious, but the all the genres. I mean, it's obviously tied by the identity and the brilliant humor that it has, but also has, like sketches that are horror, and science fiction, and there's like it's all over the place. So it just seems like a very challenging, but in a good way, like in a very demanding role for you guys, and that's why the two of you amazing production designers have been very justly nominated for it twice at the Emmys. But tell us a little bit about maybe the greatest difficulties that you faced, and how you translated that into an opportunity to work with the budget, control the budget, but also exceed at the artistic level the way you have with so many scenes.
Exactly that. I mean, having been able to design over 42 sketches in the amount, for each season, and the little amount of time we have is like an enduring marathon, that race that we've like always complete through the finish line, and with the whole crew cheering you on, like I can't tell you, like from season 1 to the last season, our amazing producer Linda Morel, she understands the challenges that our team, especially our SecDec team too, faces when they have to turn around a location from day to night. And sometimes, from season 1, we literally only had maybe the morning to do it, and then wrap out the same night. COVID had changed the process a little bit because of the safety precautions, but still we were turning around those sets. Some of them are, like you said, run from sci-fi to fantasy to period, and it's amazing how our crew have been able to endure it with a positive attitude. Like each season, we've been on it since season 1, and we've had our SecDec team with us since season 1, and they're just so excited to like come back. Our prop master Todd Daniels, he's been with us the past 2 seasons, and always really excited to come back, just because it's an overall positive experience amidst all the challenges that each department has to go through. And we're just so grateful to be surrounded by that positivity, and we're just looking forward to doing those challenges because of that. It's different when you're on a set where it's like negative people, very tired, and it's just like, no. How can you finish a marathon?
I mean, that's what it is. It is in Black Lady Sketch Show. That was the show that we were on when the pandemic hit. So we were just about to shoot season 2 when that happened, and everything shut down for months and months and months, right? And then when we came back, it was such a scary time to be working in the film industry, in every industry, but in the film industry, because the hours are so long, and people are newly renewed in their commitment to their own health, and and keeping people healthy around them. And there were regulations, there were fairly strict rules from the unions about what those protocols needed to look like. But I wouldn't have wanted to be on any other show during that time, because the people in charge, and again, that's Robin Thede, Linda Morel, our line producer, Emily Aldana, like everybody in production for that show, prioritized people over the bottom line. We always hit our budget. We were always very good about that on the show, but what kept us coming back as designers season after season, what kept our teams coming back, was not just that it was a good show we were working on. There are a lot of good shows that people could work on. You know, our crews get offers all the time to go on the show or that show. By season 4, everyone we worked with was saying to us, you know, we'll always come back to the show. And the reason why, over other shows, and the reason why is because when everyone was so scared, you know, during the pandemic, nobody knew what was going on or what was safe. The message that we got was always, we want to make you comfortable. We're not going to force anybody to do anything they're not comfortable with. As far as working, you know, we're going to make sure that all of you are covered as far as PPE, as far as protocols and things like that, and testing. If you want to test, you're going to get it, even if you're technically not needing one. You know, just being sensitive to where people were as human beings, you know, working in that environment. Not every show was like that. We didn't find every show to be like that ourselves either. You know, not every studio was like that either. So having that level of support, and that wasn't just about COVID, that was about, you know, working hours, that was about safety in terms of anything that involved a special effect. You know, it was that level of concern for people as individuals working on the show as humans and not just laborers.
That's great.
Yeah, that extended to everybody, and it didn't, and it was never informed by what your position was on the show, you know. So it was very egalitarian. It was very human. And that was just a tone that was set for that show from the very beginning. And I love that Black Lady Sketch Show had 4 amazing years and has gotten so many Emmy nominations and also like so many wins, because this is the kind of show that we are so happy for when it gets recognition, because it's also a show that is being run the way a show should be run, from the workers' side, from the labor side.
Right. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that as aspirational aspect of it, because to me it's like a failure of humanity, like a shame that for so many centuries women have been so oppressed and haven't had equality. We're still far from that. But tell me a little bit about what it means, the impact that it has on a crew to have, you know, Robin Thede and such a powerful figure, a female, at the helm of a project like this, and how important that is.
I love that you recognize that, because it is truly inspirational to work with a woman like that. Like, honestly, when she comes into a room and she addresses every single person by their name and knows their name and sees you as an equal, there's something so special to be in that environment. And it's just so inspirational. Like, I just remember, you know, season 1, like, we had no idea what we were going to get ourselves into. Like, we were just told it's going to be this, it's going to be, it sounded like a crazy show. Like, work-wise, like physical. Yeah. And I was pregnant then, and I was received with so much like kindness from everyone, the actors, and I just never felt like that on any set. Like, everyone always would see me as a PA, because I'm a young-looking Asian female. I have a quiet voice, and it wasn't until we landed Black Lady that I really felt empowered, and to be surrounded by such, you know, such powerful department heads as well it just really was like a dream come true to be around that. Such a positive experience.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Michele, it's you.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we booked season 1 of Black Lady Sketch Show, and Robin doesn't know this, and we were like, Cindy and I were like, should we tell her that you're pregnant?
I forgot about
We were just like, you know, just quietly. We're working on a different show right before we booked it, and we did our interview for that show in like a basement level of a location office building somewhere in Simi Valley, and you know, it was the most chaotic Zoom interview I could have imagined. because we had no reception. We were like running from room to room. And then after we hung up on the Zoom, we were like, if we book this, should we tell them, or do you think you can? And it was a completely ridiculous concern.
It was.
Well, it was also completely ridiculous that we thought we could maybe get away with not telling anybody, because you were literally 2 weeks from giving birth by the time the show wrapped. So there was no hiding it.
Right. But it's crazy that we have to think about that as women, like, oh, a pregnancy is something that should be celebrated. Right. And the fact that you feel like, oh, okay, like it should be brought up as a concern, it's just, it was terrifying, but the experience was completely opposite. It was totally like amazing to be pregnant on that show.
You're right. The fact that we even have to think about that just goes to show how far we have to go, where something like creating life, which is nothing bigger or more amazing than that, is something that we might consider might be a problem for certain people.
Right? I mean, it's a cliche and it's a terrible thing, but it's like it's a part of the culture of working and being a woman, that needs to change. Shift. And this is a show that helped shift that for us personally. And Robin, as far as her, she has achieved a level of in her personal life, in her professional life, of excellence, where she holds herself to such high standards, and she is so smart. She's the smartest person in every room she walks into. I'm convinced of it. But also the most lovely, the most approachable, the funniest. She has been able to achieve this high level of excellence for herself without making anybody else feel lesser in the room with her. Where if you're a department head on a show of hers, what we found is that seeing her come every day, bringing that to the room and bringing that to the project, made us just want to level up and meet her there. Like when you respect the person above you, when you see what they're doing, when they're the hardest worker there and have put in more hours on this than anybody else, and you're not, they didn't hire you so that you could pick up their slack. It frees you up to really be a collaborator. It really frees you up to be as excellent as you can be, and that was also the value of the show. It was just, I know we sound like fangirls, but
I know.
We loved working on Black Lady Sketch Show. It was amazing.
Yeah,
it's a great show. And I thoroughly believe in that what you just said about leadership is very important, that leaders are more effective by empowering others.
Yes.
And you were inspired, to rise up to the challenge, and you as department heads do the same, I'm sure, for others coming up. And the more we spread this message, I think that can affect society as a whole, because it's something that is really lacking, in many areas of our lives. Just like we seek equity and equality for women and for people of color in every field, not just in this one, because some people in our audience may want to follow your footsteps, inspired by your great artistic achievements. Other people are just fans of movies, but we want them to know, right, that they too have an impact in the world around them, and the way we treat each other is going to make a difference in how we value women or people of color, or just anybody that's different from you. The way we relate each other is going to take us a long way. It's going to improve things for all of us all together. Thank you so much for this chat. It's very illuminating. Thank you for the work you're doing, and I'm always cheering for you. I would like to keep up with everything you're doing, and wish you much success in everything you're doing, for being great artists and also great people. So thank you very much. It's been great.
Thank you so much, and thank you again for all the lovely questions and supporting us in our work. It truly feels so honored to be recognized by you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been great. So I guess that's it. Bye, Michelle. Bye, Cindy.
Okay, bye.
You guys take care.
You
Okay.
too. See you next time.